Well, I've got two of those good dogs at home, and I'm sure you folks have your dogs too. But we love our critters. You know, they're family. And they can suffer from so many of the same conditions that we do, like cancer. And since November is National Pet Cancer Awareness Month, we really need to check in with Charlotte Reed. Millions of people have watched her on Better TV, CNN, Fox and Friends, The View, Steve Harvey, and The Today Show. Now, she is the executive producer and host of The Pet Buzz. It's a syndicated pet talk radio show. And Charlotte is a petrendologist, and we're going to find out what that means, too. Hi, Charlotte. How you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you're well. Happy holidays.
Right back at you. So what is a petrendologist?
Well, a petrendologist, it's a term that I made up.
Okay.
And really, what I do is I study pet trends. So I study pet trends in order to pass the information on so that people understand whether they're getting seasonal tips, whether they're getting product advice, or they're just getting money-saving tips. So really, it's a combination of sharing my expertise with my listeners who listen to my radio show, my weekly radio show, The Pet Buzz, or whether I'm speaking and people come to one of the gigs that I do during the course of the year, or whether they see me on television.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, having your pet is an important relationship. You know you're a pet owner, a long-time pet owner, and you want to have the best relationship with your pet, no matter the age or the weight or the size or the breed,
Absolutely.
or whether you adopt a pet. So there's so much information, and we have a tendency these days to rely on Dr. Google.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Google has so much information, but not all information is great. So, and also it's important to really talk about and realistically talk about living with our dogs and cats and other animals. And that's what I like to talk about because, you know, times are tough these days, and having a pet is expensive.
Oh, it is. But by the way, did you by any chance see 60 Minutes this last weekend?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
You've got to watch it. Get it up on demand or whatever. They had a whole segment on dogs. And basically that, how they evolved from wolves and all that kind of thing. And they said the word friendliness was what separated the wolves from the dogs that we have today. And that dogs are so similar to us in body that, they get the same diseases that we do. Cancer is one of them. And a lot of the research that's being done now is with dogs that get cancer, and they try some new immunotherapy, other technology to help them, which in turn actually helps us too because we're so close.
Absolutely.
So cancer.
That's great, and I definitely will check it out.
You got to see it because they go into a lot of detail, and the structure and the body and the organs and all that are so similar that I'm sure maybe I've had dogs that got cancer, and it went through the same thing, chemotherapy, whatever we could at the time, trying to keep them alive, and yet you don't want them to suffer. It's an amazing journey we have with our animals.
It is an amazing journey, and let's talk about that journey from day one, okay? Because a lot of people decide they want a specific breed of dog, and they don't read any literature about that dog. They just like the way that dog looks.
Or it was in the movies. Remember when they had the movies with the Chihuahuas and then the Dalmatians?
Exactly.
Oh, God.
So, and that's a perfect example. I had a friend of mine who once told me we had a Dalmatian. He was absolutely crazy. We couldn't keep him. And he said, Sharpa, let me tell you what happened. I go, you don't need to tell me. I know exactly what happened.
Sure.
He goes, what are you going to say? I said, your Dalmatian didn't hear, and that's why he was not what you thought, not trainable. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, my God, you blew the end of my story. And I said, and that's because a lot of people will buy a golden retriever, what I call one of the cancer breeds or boxers, and they don't recognize or they don't realize that could be a potential health problem. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
So the first thing you do when you get your dog, or you decide you want a specific dog breed, or you want to adopt a pet from a shelter, is learn about the breed, learn about the health problems of the specific breed.
Absolutely.
And that way you can decide that, A, you can deal with it, and not only emotionally, but if you can deal with it financially.
You bet. And the other thing, too, but behavior of certain dogs. Dalmatians, one. They're beautiful animals, and they're very sweet animals, but they've got an energy level that is ballistic.
Sure.
And if you don't have that, you better not get a Dalmatian. You won't be.
Exactly.
It'll make you both miserable.
I mean, it's the same thing. If you have a more protective, or if you have a protective or a breed that has lots of energy, like a border collie, that's not a dog for everyone.
No.
You have to make a commitment, like you have Samoyeds. That's a grooming commitment.
Yeah.
They're white, they need to stay clean, and they have lots of hair.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that not only do you have to have the right vacuum cleaner, you have to have the tolerance for being able to, as well as the money, to groom them on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And look at sheepdogs. They get these beautiful Australian sheepdogs, the marble dogs, and they are gorgeous, and they're very sweet. But they're going to herd everything. They'll herd your kids and people that you have in your house. That's what their instinct is.
Exactly. And, it's the same thing with having a dog, and that's why I always say, certain breeds of dog don't necessarily bite, but that's why supervision with kids is really important.
Sure.
Or letting a dog take a break if you're having a family gathering.
Yes.
And all of these things are important, as well as making sure that you have a dog bite waiver when you purchase a dog.
Mm.
I mean, it's amazing to me that the average claim for a dog bite is now about $25,000.
Really?
That means emergency room. That means if the person can't work. That even includes if you're in the park and the dog's off leash and he jumps on a senior person and they fall down and hurt themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So all of these things, having a dog is a great and loving experience, but it's like any relationship in your life. It could cost you money. Mm-hmm. So you need to be prepared. So, it's kind of like when we talk about cancer, because it is Cancer Awareness Month. And a lot of people don't realize that cancer is, especially this month, is an awareness month to increase and raise awareness of cancer so that people can understand what one has to do if they suspect their dog has cancer or if they have a breed that has cancer. I mean, an estimated 6 million dogs and cats will be diagnosed with cancer in the upcoming year.
That's a lot.
It's one of the leading causes of death of about less than 50% of dogs and about 30% of cats. Now, dogs get cancer about the same rate humans do. Cats have fewer cancers. But if addressed early, a lot of the canine cancers are really, really treatable. Mm-hmm. Like some signs of cancer in dogs are easy to spot and others aren't. And symptoms really vary. It just depends on a lot of factors.
Yeah, and don't wait too long. A lot of times they'll say, "Oh, well, it's just a skin thing, and it'll go away." Well, no, it may progress into a worse cancer, right?
Right, and a lot of that has to do with not only a fear for for something wrong with the dog, but also fear of spending. But when you get a dog, going to the veterinarian, getting blood tests, going to have annual exams or biannual exams as your dog gets older is something that is definitely a must, especially if they get older. And the reason I say that, there's an upfront cost, but better to know than wait and wait and wait, and then the situation progresses, and then one can't deal with it, or one financially is also not prepared to deal with it. And I say that not because I want your listeners to get upset with me by talking about money, 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 but money is a reality.
Yeah,
it's like maintaining a house. There's certain things that you have to do, and having a dog, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to have a compatible life with your dog.
Absolutely. And you have to realize there will be problems. I mean, we've had quite a few dogs. I mean, my husband and I have been married almost 52 years, so we had a lot of dogs. But we've had cancer several times in our dogs. We've had cardiac problems, where the heart just will not function anymore, and they're drowning in fluid. So, and you have to understand that you're probably going to outlive your animal. A lot of people just don't want to give up. Well,
no, they don't. I mean, it depends on the animal too. I mean, so for example, if you have a bird, at our age.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, a parrot. They can live to 80 years old,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have an eclectus parrot.
Uh-huh.
He could live 30 years.
Wow.
I could be dead. So it's just the responsibility of what will happen next. But, the thing about cancer is, the big C, as we always say.
Yeah.
If you have one of the breeds, like a boxer, or if you have a golden retriever, you have to recognize this is par for the course. It's kind of like having a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel that's known for having heart problems.
Yeah.
You have to recognize that's par for the course.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I had a golden retriever, and I've had two, and they both ended up having cancer.
Really?
And, recognizing that there are lumps and bumps under the dog's skin,
yes,
or maybe, all of a sudden you have a rapid weight loss, or there's a change in appetite, change in bathroom habits. If you're examining your dog on a regular basis, and what I mean by that is just do a full body scan when you're petting your dog or brushing your dog. Take your hands and go over the dog, especially as they're approaching 5 years old, and see what's happening. The other thing that really can cut off a lot of this, and it really is DNA testing.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is so important now that, it's really funny. I had Dr. Ernie Ward. Dr. Ernie Ward is known for founding the Association of Pet Obesity Prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And, he has talked about the signs, and the symptoms and the aftermath of having heavy-set dogs,
mm-hmm,
and how it can lead to a lot of problems similar to ours.
Yeah.
Whether it's diabetes, whether it's respiratory problems, whether it's joint pain, just like humans.
Mm-hmm.
And now he works for Zoetis. And we had this conversation not such a long time ago, about a month ago on my radio show. And Ernie now has still the founding member of the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention. But now he's taken a job at Zoetis. Specifically, he's the chief veterinarian for something called Base Paws. Base Paws was started by a young lady about 4 or 5 years ago. She sold her company to Zoetis over the summer, and they do genetic testing. I mean, it's amazing what you can find out. Now, it's not cheap. It's about $100.
Mm-hmm.
But Ernie and I were talking, and, I said to him, well, he said, well, now vets should embrace this. Vets need to embrace this DNA testing. And I had to remind him, in the beginning, vets were not embracing the DNA testing. In the beginning, a lot of people, when we saw about 7 or 8 years ago, or 10 years ago, we saw more and more people adopting mixed breed dogs. They wanted to find out about the dog, what the dog was made up of.
Mm-hmm.
So they started doing genetic testing just to, for a fluke, to find out who the parents were, or what the 2 or 3 generations were. And then the next thing was behavioral traits. If you knew the dog had a Border Collie mix or a German Shepherd mix, then you would know a little bit more about what kind of exercise.
Exactly.
Then we started looking at medication for example, sight hounds. Sight hounds, Salukis, greyhounds are allergic to a lot of medication, so people were using that. Now, breeders have always done genetic testing because, good breeders do, because they want to make sure that dogs don't carry certain traits.
Yes.
So, if you have a dog and you get a puppy, it's a good idea to talk to your vet about DNA testing, because genetic testing can help you prevent particular problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why diet and exercise is so important. And, and what I mean by that is exercise is not necessarily letting your dog out in the backyard to go to the bathroom. A dog needs to be mentally and physically stimulated. And you know what? If you start walking your dog on a regular basis, it's like a nice way to relax. Your dog gets outside. He sees nice sights and sounds. I'm not a big advocate of going to the dog parks in the sense where they're not always clean, but I like to take my dogs to the dog park 1 or 2 times a week because I like them to play with other dogs.
Socialize.
I like them to have lots of experiences. I mean, a dog is just not like, a Barbie doll. You dress them up and you leave them at home. Put them in the car. Take them for a ride every so often. And then they become healthier mentally and physically, and they're also better behaved because they're used to a lot of scenarios. And even when you get a dog, take him to the vet. Just walk in there and make the appointment with the dog so he gets used to being there for that first time. Let him get a treat. Most of the vet's offices have treats. So when he goes to the vet, it's not like, oh my goodness, a burdensome emotional experience.
Absolutely.
Because there's a good chance in his lifetime he will be there more than 1 to 2 times a year.
And also, Charlotte, and I bet you'll agree with me on this, if you're going to go through a breeder, check the breeder out. I mean, we've worked with our breeder, and we've had rescue dogs in between, with them. We've had our first Samoyed actually was a rescue dog. And then we had a Golden Retriever mix. We had an English Springer Spaniel. So we've had other Samoyeds that were also rescues. And the thing is, you never know because our breeder is unbelievable. She is so careful. One of our dogs over the years had an autoimmune disease, and as a result of that, almost lost his sight. And another one, the 2 boys that were born had only 1 testicle drop, and so you had to have major surgery to go find the other one because that could cause cancer. So you never know. You've got to know what you're getting yourself into, or if you don't do it, then you're going to have problems, and you won't know how to deal with it.
You won't know how to deal with it. And you know what? Years ago, you went to your vet, and he was your primary source of care for your dog. These days, most primary vets, like your primary doctor, will refer you to a specialist
yes,
to deal with that. So that takes it up a notch of getting to know someone else and getting to trust someone else. And what I always say is, you know what? You want to make sure, like your breeder, your vet is part of your pet's team.
Yeah.
I've known my breeder for almost 20 years of my English Toy Spaniels. I love her to death. The funny thing is I called her on Thanksgiving Day because I hadn't talked to her in a while. So you want to have a relationship because she will see things. She will know things.
Yes.
She will give you advice if she's a good breeder. I mean, it's so funny, and we're talking about this, but, not so long ago, and I think I told you this, I wrote an article about dog napping because it's a new situation that a lot of dog owners are plagued with, especially French Bulldog owners.
Yeah.
So I wrote this article for Dogster, and, I will say this. I'm glad the article came out, but it was edited down because the story when I first wrote my first draft or when I submitted my article, it talked about, this was a true story about a man in Kissimmee. He had a dog named, his name was Johnny. He had a dog named Bugsy. And he left his house. He literally walked 5 minutes down the street, and someone pulled up, put a gun to his head, and said, "Can I have your dog?" And what was he goes, "No, give me the dog, not can I have give me the dog."
Yeah.
And, he eventually got his dog back 6 months later. But it turns out in the state of Florida, between where he lived in the middle of the state, north of, Kissimmee's north of Orlando, or north of Disneyland, the police in central Florida where he lived, in Orange County, started talking to police in Manatee County and Pinellas County. Pinellas County is St. Pete and area, and they found out that a group of people were robbing stores and trying to resell dogs on Facebook. Now, why does that matter? It matters because that's something that's going on with certain breeds of dogs, with your smaller breeds of dogs, with your golden retrievers, and even with your pit bulls. And the article talked about going to meet a breeder. And a lot of breeders, specifically I used 3 or 4 scenarios, and one breeder tells people before they come to her house that she says, I just want you to understand that I have cameras all over my house, and we will be with my guard dog, who's a Doberman Pinscher.
Uh-huh.
So I want you to know before you come, because maybe you won't want to come. But she's so afraid of her French Bulldogs being taken.
Oh, wow.
French Bulldogs are now the number 2 dog in the country, according to the AKC, after
That's
the
amazing.
Labrador, who's been number 1 for like 34 years.
Mm-hmm.
They are the number 2. They have moved up the ladder. They're also very expensive because it's supply and demand issue.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have big litters, so there's not a lot of them. Another breeder I talked to, I won't divulge her name because
Mm-hmm.
she interviewed me under those circumstances. She told me that when people come to her house, and she only works for referrals now. She doesn't, if strangers call her, she won't take them. You have to have at least a referral from a person she can remember, who she's been in contact with. But she said that when you come through the gates, she's a large property, and when you come through the gates of her house, which are electronic, before you come, she needs your driver's license. She needs to know the make and the model and your license plate number.
Oh, good for her.
And if you fly in and you think you're getting a car, let's say you have a rental car, it doesn't work. This happened to me recently. I had to switch my rental car before I left the lot. That you need to call her right away, because if you come with another car, she won't let you in.
Good for her.
But these are all things that are part of the dog community. And not that I was angry with Dogster, but the realistic depiction is people are trying to, if someone takes their dog, they're trying to jump into cars and they're getting hurt.
Yeah.
People are on the street. What do you do if someone has a gun? What do you do if, a bat is not sufficient? I mean, I will tell you this. I walk my dogs early in the morning, and it's dark, and I carry a taser. Not because I want to tase somebody.
So
but
do I.
because
So
I
do
have
I.
4 dogs, and I can't pick 4 dogs up and run.
No.
I
have to give you an example, because what you're saying all is so accurate. Very dear friend of ours that lives in Las Vegas. Her husband passed away, and then one of her dogs passed away. And so she wanted to get another dog. And I said, well, check the breed. I gave her the same thing, check things out. Well, her friends persuaded her to buy this cute little, I think it was a Bichon Frise, I think it was, from Ohio. And she didn't know anything about this person. Well, she learned her lesson. That dog arrived. She took him into the house, loved that dog, and spent over $5,000 to get that dog well. Skin problems, other things, all kinds of things, allergy, everything came on top of her. And she said, I have to come up with the money because he's my dog, of course. But I said, why did you, Ohio, Indiana, southern states,
Missouri, those
are pet mills, what are you doing?
They really are. And, people always say, some of the stores will say, look, I have had purebred dogs my whole entire life. I've also had dogs that I have adopted from shelters.
Yeah.
So I've had both. And it doesn't make a difference if the dog costs $50 or costs $10,000.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just to clarify, I've never spent $10,000 for a dog.
Yeah.
But you end up loving him, and you want to provide him with a stable home and give him love and support and everything he needs.
Yeah.
They're very similar to children.
Yeah, of course.
So you have to avoid long-term problems. It's like you wouldn't buy a car. I mean, I'm thinking about buying a new car,
mm-hmm.
and I was going to buy a used car. I was going to buy a car from Enterprise, who I rent from all the time, and I found a car that was a 2018 Nissan Rogue, and it had less than 20,000 miles on it.
That's
Great
good.
deal.
Yeah.
And I got approved for the loan, and at a good interest rate. And I had asked for the Carfax report, and I hadn't gotten it. And, I had said, hey, I didn't get the Carfax report. Can you send it? So the car ended up being sold to somebody else. But that's okay because I wanted to see the Carfax.
Good for you.
So, I mean, will I look again? Sure, I'll look. But I know that I wanted a 2008 and up because I know that particular car had engine problems before 2017.
You did your homework.
So, exactly. So you have to do your homework. And, it's the same thing with people who buy dogs online.
Oh, yeah.
They see the pictures, and I bet you if most of the time they send the money, if someone tells you send Western Union or the dog needs a specific crate or a dog needs that, you know what? You just tell the person, I'll come and get it.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, that person you'll never hear from again.
Well, they shipped her dog from Ohio in a van that was packed with kennels with dogs.
Sure, but the reason I'm saying that now is because it's the holidays.
Yeah.
And this is a time that people love to buy dogs. They love to add a new addition to their family, especially if they have kids. And I tell them now, you know what? You have to be prepared. And it's funny because this time of the year, we spend more time talking about preparing for the holidays, whether it's gifts or getting a puppy or puppy scams. I just, this week on the show, we have Brian Oglesby, who works for the Better Business Bureau of Florida, and he talks about pet and puppy scams. And they're in the last few years, and a lot of that has to do with COVID and people wanting companionship.
Yes,
is the fact that plays on your emotion, and you fall in love with a picture, and you could imagine yourself with a dog. It's like when you look at advertising today,
sure.
And I love to use the Pendleton ad, okay?
Now,
I
you
love
know what?
The Pendleton
We're running
brand.
short of time,
Sure.
and I don't want to run out before I ask you about your website.
Sure. Well, you can go to thepetbuzz.com
Okay.
And check it out. The show airs around the country from Florida to Washington State, so it's all over the country, or you can listen on your favorite streaming channel like iTunes, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. And we love for people to write in and ask questions. We even have something called the Pet Buzz Mailbag. They
Fantastic.
can write in and ask us a question, and we'll answer it on next week's show.
I love it. Charlotte, we always run short of time, so I got to have you back again, okay?
Sure.
Terrific, and thank you so much. And, of course, happy holidays to you, too.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you. It's always a pleasure talking dogs and cats and animals with you.
Absolutely.
A true dog lover. Happy holidays.
Take care, John. I appreciate that. In the meantime, live simply, laugh often, love deeply, and above all else, dare to dream. Talk with you next time right here on Pop Off.